Armchair commanders, we call the shots. From our living room thrones where the action's hot. We're the generals of fiction, the masters of war. In silver screen battles with buttered popcorn. Armchair commanders, armchair commanders.
It's kept it so warm that it's actually quite hot now in my head, so I can willingly take it off.
I was going to say, don't take it off just because he insulted your hat.
I mean, I think it's nice. I think it's cute.
Look, I'm taking it off because my wife said I'm not allowed to have it on if it's recorded. But that's why I asked you on the email. You don't record picture for this madness.
No.
Okay.
But welcome to the Armchair Commanders podcast. My name is John.
And I'm Jack.
And this week we are fortunate to be rejoined for the first time, if that makes sense, by actor Rick Warden. Rick, welcome. If you'd like to say hi to the folks.
Hello, everybody. Hello. Yes, it's official. I have returned.
Sort of.
Do the folks know anything about the madness?
We bitched about it a lot.
Right.
So,
I mean, you could have just lied about it.
So our listeners at home who aren't in the know for the joke we're telling here is we had Rick on probably, I want to say almost like a year ago to review a film called Bravo 20 because it was a film that he was a part of. And it was a wonderful discussion. And we were still under our old recording platform at that time, which had been giving us some issues, but nothing totally catastrophic. And then our episode with Rick was completely lost. It never saved, never downloaded, nothing like that, which is why we now use a different recording app. So this is our second conversation with him, but this will be the first time you guys will be hearing us chat with him about a film.
Which is a downer because obviously we solved world peace on that chat.
We did.
I know,
Do you know what I mean? We nailed a lot of stuff on that chat.
We did.
I don't know.
We
had a very lengthy discussion about pooping in bags on that episode too. So
I still stand by my guns.
There was a reason for the pooping in bags discussion. I mean, we can revisit pooping in bags if you like, but you know, we have the world as our oyster for a bit. So if you want to go there, then let's go there. But we that was because in Bravo 20 they have to poop in bags, right? They also have to cut up.
That's why SAS are real special forces. Like Robert De Niro as a quote-unquote special forces Green Beret. He never pooped in a bag. That's why he got captured.
Yeah, that's a fair shout, actually. That's a fair shout. So did you brave my request then, I take it?
We did. We did do the Deer Hunter.
Okay. Had you done it before?
No, but I've seen it.
What does that mean?
No, we haven't done the Deer Hunter.
You mean talked about it?
Yeah, and we haven't done the Deer Hunter for this podcast, but I've already seen this movie.
And John?
This is my first watching of it. I was very familiar with it, and I have seen clips of iconic moments from this film, but I've never seen it start to finish.
Okay, interesting. I thought it would be a good. But listen, you know, we can, as we are wont to do, and I'm sure we can dot about all over the place, guys. I hear you opening up a can there, John. So I thought, in solidarity, what have you chosen to drink for the podcast here?
I decided because you're joining us and you're also a Briton. Ooh, classic Diet Coke.
Ooh. Oh, yeah. And a red size one. See, that makes it look like a normal size can until I put it near my face and you realize it's actually teeny.
Really tiny.
It's a tiny red size can.
Did I ever tell you? So we've had Matt Leach on before.
I didn't know that.
Yep. So we've had Matt on before, and this is a story we've also told here a couple of times. But when we had him on, I was drinking that episode I was drinking right now, which is it's a local beer, and it's a a raspberry Kolsch is the type of beer it is.
Right.
But it's very aptly, it makes me feel very manly to say this, but I'm drinking a beer called Princess Yum Yum.
Nice.
But so we were doing this episode with Matt, and I told him what I was drinking. He's like, man, if I was in the same room as you, I'd be kicking you in the head.
Really?
He did.
What? Because it's what's his suggestion? That it's somehow beneath him, the Princess Yum Yum.
It's not a proper beer.
Yeah,
not a man beer.
He said
what would
something. He said something like ordering that beer in a pub in the UK is how you get your ass kicked.
Is that right? Right. I wonder what he'd make of a tiny little Diet Coke then.
I don't know. You're going to have to send him a text or something.
I don't see Matt as the violent type, guys. I don't think he would have come through on that. I've never seen Matt do anything, although...
Well, at least it's good to know it was a hollow threat.
Yeah, I think it was a hollow threat. And also, I think he's about... Well, he's probably still in shape, Matt. But, he's old. He's not like you young'uns. I mean, how old are you?
Young'uns.
Well, how old are you, Jack?
29.
Are you 29? Are you kidding me? And you guys met at college, didn't you?
Yeah.
Yep.
Are you
I just
both in
turned
your
30.
20s?
Well,
John, you in your 20s too?
No, I just turned 30, so...
Okay, what, recently?
Yeah, this past week.
Happy birthday, man. We were just discussing, we've been, you might well know this, and maybe it's different where you are, but how tricky it must be to have a birthday in the last week.
Yeah, it's... I've had a lifetime of, this is your birthday and Christmas present. Thanks, guys.
Yeah. And in early January, everyone's spent all their money. Where I am, certainly, it's grim weather. No one wants to go out, etc., etc.
They've already spent all their social capital on Christmas. They don't have time to go out and party with you, especially after doing Christmas and New Year's already.
Yeah.
May I tell him the best part about your specific birth date?
I don't know. Go ahead, because I think this is going to be a surprise to me.
So, he was born on January 6th, which up until recent years meant nothing. And then the insurrection happened on his birthday.
Okay. Yeah.
I remember that specific day too, because I was working for Child Protective Services at the time.
Right.
And I had some of our kids had a visit scheduled online.
I was going to say they had parents there.
No, but so my job was to drive there, pick up the kids, and from the van, because I had to pick them up in a van. Yes, I know how bad that looks, but then I had to video call their parents, and then just be a phone stand for them while they call their parents.
Right.
But before that happened, I get a notification on my phone from the BBC that's like, "Oh, people are storming the Capitol." I'm like, "Oh, no fucking way!" So I got into the live feed and saw
Those
people
selfish sons of bitches are storming the Capitol there.
Yeah, and climbing over walls and breaking shit. I'm like, dude, holy shit! And then I had to go and do that, make sure it went off without a hitch. And then I came back, logged my drive and my visit, and then I took the rest of the day for myself off. And I immediately went to one of my hangouts in Pierre, my hometown. I sat at the bar, and I'm like, change to the news. It doesn't matter which channel. And I just camped out with a beer and a meal and just watched the insurrection. And then I remembered, hey, wait a minute. I know somebody that was born today. So I call DP and I say, "Happy birthday, John," in a very chipper voice. And he says, "Fuck off."
Well, do you know what? I will now never... I am terrible at remembering birthdays, John. I barely remember my own, all right?
But you're going to remember mine now.
But I will never forget your birthday, which must be pretty rare. My wife wanted me to get a birthday book and write them all in. I won't need to write yours in.
Well, that's good. I had very strong opinions of it, not in the positive sense. So much like Jack, I also got my news from the BBC.
Why
Because
were you getting
here,
it from the BBC?
because BBC plays on one of, like, there's a radio station here that does a live
Right.
feed.
I think
So it's really ass backwards, where it's produced by the BBC, but then it's sent over here to be broadcasted on one of our radio stations. So
I'm kind of amazed by that, and also a kind of buoyed by it in a way.
the BBC is much more tolerable to me than our
lot of
major
American
news
news.
agencies.
What, either left or right, CNN or Fox, or anywhere in between?
They both annoy the shit out of me.
They just
So-
annoy the shit out of you. Yeah.
NPR is pretty all right, but I prefer BBC.
But nothing like a calm British voice telling me there are thousands in a mob storming the Capitol, and I'm just fucking punching a hole in my wall like, God damn it!
or depending on which presenter you get, oh mate, bunch of wankers storming the waters.
So it didn't seem like a Monty Python sketch to you to have a BBC presenter tell you that your political system was imploding.
Oh no, there is some Monty Python to it. Maybe, and dare I say a bit of Benny Hill with a
Yeah, a little bit of Benny.
My wife told me she was not a fan of seeing me that day, because she just walked into the living room as I had the news on in the background, and she came down because she's upstairs just doing whatever, and she came down because she heard me say the statement, "Why are they not stacking bodies?"
that was the line that came through.
Yeah.
Okay.
And for just as a clarification point here, I am saying, why wasn't the Metro Police stacking bodies, not the other way around?
Right. Yeah.
So,
when's the happy day this January? What's the date? The
20th.
20th. Okay, Monday 20th. I think. Is that right? Is it a Monday? Yeah,
maybe.
it is Monday. It is Monday.
Right.
Yeah.
It's whatever. Anyways,
it is whatever. Yeah, let's not go down that crackers route. Yeah. Listen, I want to know where you both are. You've got South Dakota on your hoodie, and
So
my wife says I've been remiss by not asking you where you both are.
Remiss.
So I live in Colorado,
I live in South Dakota, the capital.
but we both went to the University of South Dakota. That's how we met.
Colorado, does that border with South Dakota?
No. It's not. I had to think about that for a second.
I've got Colorado. I'm just looking for South Dakota.
So go one state north and one state east.
Oh yeah, gotcha. So it's got Omaha in between it. No,
Mhm.
it's got NE.
Right.
What's NE? Nebraska.
Yeah, that's Nebraska.
It's got Nebraska in between you guys.
I mean,
Not
Nebraska's
much.
not really a state, but
Yeah, it's
whatever.
not much. It's just a bunch of corn.
Okay, well that's what I remember about my drive down to Kansas from Minneapolis. Was a lot of corn.
I feel bad for you that you have experienced driving through Kansas.
Do you know what? It was so flat, guys. It was so straight and flat. What's that flipping state? I'm showing you sharing with you my terrible geography now. On the way to Kansas between Minneapolis, there is the flattest, it's scenic, I guess, of sorts, but the road is just straight all the way there. What would that be?
Huh? That's
Probably
a lot
Kansas
of
or
states,
Missouri.
really.
It's
Maybe,
not It's not Idaho, is it? Where the heck?
Are you thinking of
Oklahoma?
Iowa?
This is so embarrassing. Minneapolis. Here we go. Minneapolis. Yeah, Iowa. That one. That's
Ow.
exactly it. I drove all the way through Iowa.
If
Iowa.
you drove through the center part of Iowa, I can understand your distaste for it.
It wasn't
If you-
distaste. It was so flat and so straight, the road, that guess what? At that stage, I was doing, would you believe it, little drawings and paintings on my own iPhone, right, for a weird exhibition that I was doing back in the UK. and I had it on cruise control, and I drew a flipping picture of the freeway as I was driving down there, because there was nothing on the roads, and it was just as you've said, corn on the left, corn on the right. As far as I know, it was corn anyway.
See, if you ever decide to revisit the area, I would recommend doing what's called the Great River Road, and it like you start up in Minnesota and you go through Iowa, all those states you mentioned,
Yeah.
but there's a roadway that follows the edge of the Mississippi River, and it's a very beautiful
Wow.
scenic drive. So
What
there
did
was
you
a way
call
for
it?
you to it's the Great River Road.
Okay, all right. No, I'd be interested to do that. I'll be honest. I'm a sucker for driving in America, guys. I absolutely love it. I'm serious, Jack. I love it. Yeah, it's just the road trips I've done in the States with my wife and little babe. When she was a baby, my eldest child, we did the Big Sur, and we did Napa and Yosemite. But I've also done that wacky one I've just told you about, and I've also driven from LA through to Vegas and round about there. And
Great Desert Drive.
yeah, and we took in Joshua Tree National Park, and where's the other one? That wacky one? Is it Zion or something like that? Down in that's another national park. Amazing countryside you've got, man. You've got this enormous, extraordinary country, and I always like it on the Band of Brothers tours that we do. You might have talked to Matt about them. When I talk about distances with Americans and driving, they just laugh me out of the room, because I say, "Oh, we're doing quite a long drive for this day. We're driving from Normandy to Eindhoven," and the Texans look at me like, "Are you out of your mind? That's how far we drive to pick up groceries."
How long?
Jeez.
Like how many hours is that as a drive?
The Normandy to Eindhoven leg takes us pretty much a day, really. But still, for the Texans and for the Americans, they just don't think of it as a long drive. For me, that is eons, guys. That's
I mean, if you can get to your destination within a day, that's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you can get to your destination and back home within a single day, that's nothing.
What about between where you are, Jack, and where you are, John? What's that drive in a day? Is that doable in a day?
I don't think so, and nor do I want to.
I think it's doable. That would be on the longer side. Probably the more reasonable for it would be to meet halfway, because I can get to South Dakota within 6 hours, but that's the western half of the state, and he's more
center. Like, I'm almost at the dead center of the state.
Right, and you'd go through Nebraska to get there, would you?
I don't know if I'm ready to risk that my life on that.
Now.
I could. Where I live in Colorado, I would take go up through Wyoming and then over.
Oh, would you? Why? Because of the way the freeways work.
It just depends. At the end of the day, it's just going to be a long ass drive, regardless. So.
And what's the weather like at the moment for you guys? Is it different?
Cold.
Are you in different time zones? This is how I'm loving this, man, because I'm so ignorant. Are you in different time zones?
Yeah, he's in Central, and I'm in Mountain. Well, actually, the time zone dividing line runs through the middle of the city he lives in.
Okay. So he can be in both time zones.
It's actually kind of funny. So Pierre, there's two towns. There's Pierre and Fort Pierre. Pierre is on Central Time Zone. Fort Pierre is on Mountain. So if it's a Friday night and you're out hopping the bars, as soon as it's closing time in the Central Time Zone, you just go over to the Mountain Time Zone. You got an extra hour of drinking.
Yep.
Nuts.
God, I love my town.
That is completely nuts. Now, we're gonna. At least we don't have to edge towards that wacky area in the Pacific, right, where you can be in 2 days at once.
Oh,
am I getting that right, or am I sounding like a complete clown?
No, I get what you mean. Yeah,
doesn't it in theory exist? Have I just broken some sort of law of physics?
Yeah, it's definitely a technicality thing where you can straddle 2 time zones.
There was actually, I forget when it was, but there was a ship that a long time ago. It was actually like in 2000, where they made this plan where they found, they did their map work and whatnot, and they sailed to the date line, but they also sailed to the equator so that they could claim that their ship was in 2 different centuries, 2 different millennium, and in 2 different days and 2 different hemispheres
Wow, I love that.
at the same moment.
Right, yeah.
Wild.
Unfortunately, my brain can't really take it in. I'm sure that that's technically possible, right?
Oh, for fuck's sake.
Doesn't mean anything in a weird kind of way. If you were, I mean, it is possible what you're describing, is it? This is for a different podcast, isn't it? This is for like some sort of physics or astrological chat podcast, and I was never good at science, man.
Oh, where'd he go? God damn
I
it.
should give up. Where's he gone? We can keep talking, can't we, without him?
Oh yeah, as long as he comes back. Anyway, oh, he said his internet shit out on him.
Okay. My internet's pretty good. How about you?
Mine's fine. I mean, as long as you can hear me, it's
Yeah,
fine.
man. I can.
All right. Well, while Jack works on his technical difficulties,
Yeah.
you know, when we were talking about getting you back on this episode, there's a couple of you definitely wanted to go the Vietnam route.
I did for some reason. Yeah.
And I think before we switched to this, you wanted to do Apocalypse Now. So
Yeah.
what? There he is.
Here
I
he-
have returned.
Hey, buddy. Yeah. You were saying that's true, John.
I'm just going to stop this and restart it just to make sure nothing that issue. But I'm not playing those games. So yeah, you originally had discussed wanting to do Apocalypse Now, which is another heavy Vietnam film.
Yeah, you're noticing a pattern here.
What was your inspiration or your desire to A, go for Vietnam, and then B, go for that film and then change your mind to Deer Hunter?
I guess maybe it's me partly showing my age. I think probably Brits like me, or plenty of people around the world actually, get their source material weirdly, and not particularly healthily probably, about a conflict like Vietnam from movies. If I'm honest, because obviously I'm born in 1971, so I don't have any reference for it. So my introduction to Vietnam, because I even though I got a history degree, I've got this weird thing where if it happened in the 20th century, it doesn't really feel like history to me. Certainly not mid to late 20th century. Do you know what I mean? It just...
I can definitely see that.
So at university, I studied... one of my subjects in my history degree was Black civil rights in the States. And I performed worse in that paper than any other paper, partly, I think, because it didn't feel like history. It felt too current to me. So what I'm trying to say to you is I was very largely, and still am, pretty ignorant about Vietnam. And you guys may well have more to say about that and know, I'm sure, more about it. But my main kind of introductions to it came via Platoon, came via Apocalypse Now, came by The Deer Hunter. Apocalypse Now is certainly, when I was younger, top 2 or 3 movies for me that I would watch. Not quite on a loop, because it's a bit heavy to watch on a loop. But
It's also a bit long to be watching on a loop.
Yeah. I think there was a period when if you'd asked me what are your favourite movies and we'd done my top 5, Apocalypse Now would always have been in there. Why then did I switch? I think it's because I hadn't seen Deer Hunter for a while. And because Yeah, because I knew that I rated The Deer Hunter very highly when I was younger. Anyway, I mean, the answer to your question is partly historical. It's partly creative as well. It's partly to do with an answer to you about acting and actors. So Apocalypse Now for me is far more something that directorially blew my brain when I was younger. But it wasn't necessarily because of actors and performances in it. Whereas The Deer Hunter, you know, you're spoiled for acting in that movie. But you know, I'm interested to know what you young chaps thought about it or think about it, particularly if you hadn't seen it before, because I think generationally it's pretty interesting. I'll preface that by saying, or I'll suggest that I think people younger than yourself would struggle to get past the wedding because of how slow and long.
It was still a struggle for me. So
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised. I'm not here to have a discussion where I just tell you, oh, it's fantastic and isn't such and such great. I'm more interested in genuinely what you make of it.
Jack, how about you get the ball rolling on that?
I like. Shut the fuck up. I'm 6 months younger than you, and you're acting like I'm just some whippersnapper.
Get off my lawn!
But I liked the wedding scene as slow as it could be. It was fun. You know, there's like this lighthearted air around it that I knew preceded some dark shit. So I enjoyed it while it lasted.
Yeah.
Much like, you know, our protagonist probably should have more.
Yeah. But I mean, I think it must be an hour long, right? That whole I mean, you could argue.
I clocked it at like 40 minutes is how long the wedding takes.
Like
it's an absurd. It's almost like a legitimate I'm filming a party thing at this point.
Well, you know and have you read up on it at all?
No.
Okay, well, you've just hit the nail on the head. Because what my understanding is, I mean, there's a bigger discussion for us to have about the director, Michael Cimino, who I think is partly credited. I think I'm right in saying that, you know, he brought down a studio with the picture after this. Right? Heaven's Gate literally bankrupt a studio.
Oh. Yeah. So I did read a bit about the director of this because this film was massively over budget.
Yeah.
He's kind of an odd duck because I don't know. I think odd duck's a good way to put it because he's the kind of guy who's like, I've written 50 movie scripts. Like that's an actual quote from him, but he's produced 5, 6 films
in his lifetime. He's dead now. He passed away a couple years ago. But that's my point to you about the wedding scene. I looked at it with slightly fresh eyes this time. Because my understanding is that he did exactly what you've just described. He set up a massive wedding full of supporting artists. I mean, hundreds, guys. We'll get onto that subject anyway, to do with his crowd scenes and stuff like that. And then he shot the wedding, and it went on for days. It might even have been weeks, actually, but it's certainly...
That must have been exhausting. Could you imagine having to act partying for days on end?
Well, it's because I've done this for 30 years now, made film in some sense or another over 30 years, all the way from low budget, no budget short films and corporate videos right up to pretty big budget stuff. I've got some kind of inkling of what that takes to do what you just described, right? To make a scene like that, those wedding scenes, right? And when I watched it back this time, The Deer Hunter, I just thought, I'm flabbergasted by this. How on earth are the actors as loose within this as they are? Because we're talking about probably 70mm, certainly 35mm film. This isn't tape, guys. You can't just keep rolling it. It's all cool action, cool cut. That's before you even get something in the can, and then you have to check the gate, guys, which is an old-fashioned thing for checking on the gate to see if there's a hair flickering somewhere within it. It must have been multi-camera. I cannot even imagine how much that cost to put on that wedding. And I think everyone there, when I watched it this time, forget the big actors. You know, forget that you're sticking De Niro in a close-up during this wedding, or Walken, or Streep, or whoever, and getting them to somehow I can't imagine what the script looked like for that. It seems very improvisational, that whole wedding thing. And I'm not going to say that I don't think it isn't very, very long. There's certainly an argument in The Deer Hunter for thinking, man, we could have just cut to flipping Vietnam, couldn't we? We could have really... I'm not suggesting that I would have thought the film was anywhere near as good, because you're setting up extraordinary depth of friendships, aren't you, within that wedding stuff.
I think that's the thing that frustrated it about me, is because I definitely could see and tell that the reason why, you know, realistically, this is kind of a classic, like, 3-act story.
Mm-hmm.
And the first act is supposed to be setting up, like, these are just normal guys living, you know, normal American life. Like, they're trying to get the audience to be like, what's the word I'm trying to think of?
Just empathize.
Yeah, that's the one. I'm so good at empathy. You know, they're trying to get you to like the characters and to associate with them. And I think because of how long that scene was, and me like being like, okay, this is a war movie. And in the grander sense, like, yes, it is a war movie, but it's more than that. But the fact that it's like, oh God, the first fucking scene is 40 goddamn minutes. Like, when is this going to move on? I think the length takes away from the objective that it's trying to accomplish.
Well, I think there's a reason why. Well, it's interesting you should say that, but there's a reason why I've watched Apocalypse Now ? Number of times. I mean, I can't even guess, 20, 30 times, whatever. And I've only seen The Deer Hunter a couple, maybe 2, 3 times max. And I think it's partly what you're saying. That doesn't mean that I don't think it's rich and extraordinary and pretty mind-blowing, really, when it's great, extraordinary. But I agree with you. That first act it's long. It's heavy and it's long. And you think, and certainly by today's standards, you think you could tell this in 15. You don't need 40 for this. I mean, I thought it was an hour, but it's interspersed, isn't it, with that pretty extraordinary deer hunting trip, though, I think, which is pretty important.
I almost think you could completely cut out the wedding scene and start, like, you could have like a moment,
I know what you're saying.
Like, you could have like maybe like 3 minutes where you show them at a party and then transition it to like, all right, we got done with our wedding party. Like, we're going to have a guys' weekend in the mountains, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And then you can, because a lot of that, with the Deer Hunter obviously being in the title, with that pre and post hunting scene is where you're getting a lot of the deep impactfulness of what the conflict does to our characters. And we get that contrast of the guys who went to war and the guys who didn't. I would have much preferred seeing a film where it's like, yay, we're so happy we got married. All right, guys, let's go hang out and get drunk in the woods and shoot guns. Then traumatic Vietnam, and we get back and we see the hunting trip isn't what it used to be. I think
there are absentees, right? That's why the hunting trip is.
You could accomplish the same thing. I genuinely believe you could accomplish this film and it still be as good as it is without the wedding scene.
Interesting. Yeah. What do you think, Jack?
I mean,
I'm going to hit the restroom real quick, but continue, Jack.
I mean, if we cut out the wedding scene, what would the other 10 minutes of this movie be about?
You mean it's I mean, he said it's 3 acts, right? The wedding scene, in my head, or certainly let's forget the wedding scene until they hit Vietnam, until you see De Niro, you know, in the thick of it. I think it's an hour until you get there, right?
Yeah, it's just under the halfway point.
Right. Okay. So you're spending the first half, and then you're actually not in Vietnam for that long, are you? Even though it's very impactful, you're not there for more than, I guess, maybe 40 minutes, something like that.
Yeah, and they're there. They meet up with their buddy again. Traumatic shit happens. They get captured. Yeah. And then the iconic Russian roulette scene.
Yeah, the extraordinary scene. Yeah, and then they're back. Then De Niro comes back and finds out that Walken is still back in Vietnam after having spoken to Savage, the actor who plays Stephen. They find out, don't they, that he's still alive and he knows where he is because that's where he last saw him. So you then go back to Vietnam again. So you've got a sort of it's a pretty unusual structure, let's be honest, Jack.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I'm not suggesting I think I suggested it because precisely because even though I think it's revelatory and extraordinary, the film, I do think it's flawed. I'm not here to say that I think it's, a perfect movie at all. But I don't think I don't think many films like that were made back in the day. A handful, certainly in the 1970s, they had the guts to make films like that are sort of auteur created by a writer director. But certainly no movies like The Deer Hunter, are going to get made. Arguably again, certainly for the last 10, 15 years, nothing at all like that as ambitious as that would be made. We were just discussing the structure thing, John, about starting for so long in Pennsylvania. That's where they are, isn't it?
Correct.
And then,
have you ever been to Pennsylvania?
No, but Harry Welsh is from Pennsylvania, so I often think I ought to go to Wilkes-Barre, certainly.
I know at Gettysburg, there's a museum there that has an absurdly large collection of Easy Company memorabilia.
I should go. I'll make a pilgrimage there. Genuinely, I think I should go.
Speaking of pilgrimages, me and Jack are making a trip to Toccoa this year.
Are you?
Yeah,
Can you hold that thought while I go to the restaurant?
Of course.
My turn.
So, DP, what do you think about this movie?
I appreciate what it is for its time frame and what it did. There are genuinely great aspects of this film. It's just, I'm going to have to hold on to this thought till he gets back, because
I don't know if you heard this, but after you left, I asked him, "Hey, if we do cut out the wedding scene, what's the rest? What's the other 10 minutes of this movie going to be about?"
Accurate.
Yeah, I'm back. I'm still interested in getting into the thick of it with you two on this.
So, Jack just asked me what I thought about, generally what I thought about this. And what I started off with is I appreciate what it was for its time frame. There's some bigger picture aspects that I like to try and keep in mind when I am thinking about this film. If I was just watching this film as a guy watching a movie with no other motivations behind it, I'd be like, what the fuck is this stupid fucking, That being said, I'm not watching this film through that lens.
Mm-hmm.
When I see that this film is nominated for multiple Oscars, it won a few of them.
Yeah.
I'm like, if you were to ask John from 2 years ago this question and tell him that information, he'd be like, what the fuck are you talking about? I think the biggest aspect of the power of this film comes from the fact that it was produced and released so shortly after the conflict ended. This came out in 78. We left in 75, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
No, we left in 73.
Okay. Still, 5 years is not that.
It's nothing. Given that it takes a year, given that it takes 2 years to make the film. So you can knock 2 years off that anyway.
I mean, imagine, and granted, there already has been Afghan war movies made that were made while the conflict was still going on. But imagine a super deep, dark film about Afghanistan being made today about the American involvement in it. It's still very raw,
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what this film has going for it is, yes, this is a war film, but this is more a film of regular people living their lives, going off, experiencing it, and then coming back and wrestling with the aftermath of having been there.
It's interesting you say that because I saw an interview with Cimino where he essentially says it's not a war movie. Where he essentially says it's about a family, and what he means by that is the mates, of misfits and how they deal with trauma.
That I definitely think that is an accurate representation, but to say that this isn't a war film is very misguided, because the whole basis of this family of guys' trauma is based in the war. I remember reading interview article with Christopher Walken, and somebody asked him a question in regards to like, how do you feel about making like a Vietnam War movie? And he's like, we never said it was Vietnam. And I was like, go fuck yourself. Like, what other war is this supposed to be? Like,
yeah. You look at the terrain, you look at everything about it. Yeah. But I only mention that, the Cimino thing, because it gives us a window into what we were talking earlier about that strange structure. That if it is, in the director's opinion, less a war film and more a film about families ruptured by trauma, then he doesn't begrudge. He's not only does he not begrudge, he's willing to indulge you with an hour before you get to the war, and you're only going to be in the war for half an hour, maybe 40 minutes. Then you're coming home again. And although you flip back there, the amount of combat actually in the Deer Hunter. By the way, we need to talk about things like that chopper bit, man. The bridge bit. That was like 2 or 3 days shooting when they're on that bridge being picked up by that chopper. And it's not stunt guys. It's them being picked up by the chopper guys.
But did they get paid extra for doing their own stunts? Is the real question.
Can you imagine how you set that up? I'll tell you what, the point is, in just a moment in its defense, John, the set pieces, the stuff that happens within the film that made my jaw drop this time was stuff where, unlike 20 years ago when I'd never made anything, certainly, and before I'd made Band of Brothers probably as well, stuff like even that bridge thing alone, to set that up, that when Saigon starts to tear itself apart, those scenes in the street, to set up that kind of chaos and carnage and shoot it sumptuously on 35mm with movie stars in as I say, in the foreground carrying your story, just seems almost impossible to me in this day and age. I just don't see. I don't know how you'd make that film now. I don't know. I don't think you would make it now. But if you did make it, I don't know how. And I think The Wedding is another example of that slightly. I mean, now you could do that on tape, so you could just shoot for fun.
Right.
But I'm talking about the stuff where extras in a different language, some of those street scenes in Saigon, when it's chaotic. Do you know the bits what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
when De Niro
like
comes
after
back
they
to
get retrieved, but before he goes home.
Well, either that bit or when he comes back to find him and the place is just carnage. And I just thought, how has he delivered instruction to? What has he got? Myriad assistant directors, like a team of 20 of them, talking to this 100 people about what particular brand of chaos they're going to throw into the picture as he rolls on 35mm. I just don't see how the hell he's done any of it. Not really, if I'm being honest.
No, there's this film is impressive from many different aspects, and I think the thing I'm trying to balance is that, like, technically speaking, yes, I understand and appreciate why this is a well-regarded film, and I can acknowledge it, but there's something just like deep inside me that's like, I don't care for it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? It doesn't just doesn't hit me the way I think it should. I think the biggest thing that I took away from it, and maybe that's my issue, is the fact that I think you genuinely have to watch this movie in its entirety, and I think you have to finish the movie before you can actually generate an opinion on it. Mm-hmm. Because I think if you watch this movie and did what I did, which is like halfway through, I'm just like, get on with it. Like, God, I don't get where this is going. If I think you have to put your brain in neutral and then do your critical thinking once it's done, like just experience the story. If you're doing your critical thinking throughout the film, it's going to ruin the film for you, I think. Because I think one of the biggest things that I did enjoy and like about this film is the fact that, yes, this film was produced and distributed so close after we exited Vietnam, but it also takes a massive lens of this film is mental health, whether it says it directly or like it doesn't necessarily say it directly, but that is genuinely a major point or fixture of the film is mental health. And 1978, like, mental health care is not
on
good
anyone's agenda.
Well, I mean, the United States military was still kicking people out for mental, like, early Iraq and Afghanistan days. If you had a person who, broke down from combat stress, they were booted out, as opposed to, oh, we should probably get this guy some care or something. Like, mental health care within the military has really only been a thing for like the last decade or so, like openly accepted. So the fact that they're tackling this topic in such an early time frame, and I know 78 is not like an early time frame, but in this realm of the world, this particular topic it is. I genuinely appreciate that, and I think that that's revolutionary, and especially talking about those mental health issues as America is still grappling with
a macro mental health issue.
Yeah, with what just happened, and like
the trauma of Vietnam for America. Yeah.
And like we're also dealing with our first, like, quote unquote loss. Like, we were the undefeated World War champs, and then this shit happens.
Yeah. It's a very different film, isn't it, to Apocalypse, for God's sake. To Apocalypse Now. It's a very different animal, I think. And I think one of the reasons why I was hooked on Apocalypse Now when I was a bit younger was probably linked to the psychedelic nature of that movie, to the fact that they're all wasted when they're making it. And you can there's that extraordinary film Hearts of Darkness about the making of Apocalypse Now, and you can tell viscerally how crazed that set was, and slightly
you can
narcotic.
smell the napalm.
Well, I mean, Sheen had a heart attack making that movie on camera for us.
Yeah,
Dennis Hopper it's not. It doesn't. You don't have to guess that he's off. He's stoned out of his mind, man. Come on, and it's not just him. When they're on the boat traveling upriver on that, they're wasted, man. It's a very, very different beast. But that appealed to me more in my 20s. But a bit like what you're saying, the Deer Hunter, I got drawn in. I knew the music. You see, I grew up. You say it came out in 78. I was born in 71, and that piece is it Cavatina, I think it's called, that guitar piece that rings through the Deer Hunter, the theme. It was like listening to the Carpenters when I was a kid. It was background. It was during that year. I just grew up loving that piece of music when I was little, or it was just sound that I knew it was something. There's some serenity to it, something really quite beautiful about it. I wonder if that won an Oscar as well. It might well have done, actually. I know that Walken won Best Supporting Actor, didn't he? And Michael Cimino won Best Director. I wonder if that piece of music, maybe Best Song didn't even exist then at the Oscars. I don't know.
Let me see. I have the Wikipedia pulled up on it.
But like you, I didn't come here to tell you I just think it's the greatest movie and it's flawless. I was saying to Jack while you popped away that there's a reason why I've only watched it 2 or 3 times, and that's because it's flawed. I think extraordinary, but flawed.
Let's see. It says Best Picture, Best Director, Best Supporting Actor, Best Film Editing, Best Sound. Yeah.
Wow.
those were what it won, and then it got nominated for cinematography, screenplay, best actor, best supporting actress. I think that's the thing I also didn't really understand is that like, so this is early on in Meryl Streep's career.
Yeah,
Um,
pretty early, I think. Yeah, I don't know really. She seems to have been
and
with us forever, doesn't she? Just
yeah,
basically teaching the world how
she
to act.
Meryl Streep. I think she's an amazing actress, and I love a lot of the work she's been in.
Yeah, she's got.
Um,
Yeah.
but seeing that she was nominated for Best Supporting Actress in this film doesn't
Mm.
really make sense to me because I feel like her character in this film is very undeveloped and kind of just
She's not in it an awful
background
lot.
in nature.
Yeah, she's not awful. She's not in it an awful lot. You can see why Walken won for Best Supporting Actor, I'm sure,
Oh
because
yeah,
he's in it
like
that much
Christopher
more.
Walken getting Best Supporting Actor totally makes sense. Robert De Niro's performance getting nominated, he didn't win, but being nominated that makes sense.
Yeah.
I just for Meryl Streep, I don't see where that one's coming from now.
Is it pre Kramer versus Kramer? Was Kramer versus Kramer the next year? Use your clever little fingers to type into your clever little.
My Google Doc.
Do you like that, Jack? My definition of his.
Yeah.
That's my technical jargon. Use your
Also,
clever little fingers.
I like your
Yeah,
hand
Kramer
sign
versus
of
Kramer was
typing.
79.
Okay, so she landed it, on either after the Deer Hunter, well, probably while she was doing Deer Hunter, that was being set up. Have you looked into any of the making of story? The making of is kind of interesting with all of these films. And have you seen the story about John Cazale, the actor who plays Stan in it? Do you know the story
I
about
knew
him?
that. I knew he had cancer while it was being filmed.
Okay, he's Meryl Streep's, I think, husband?
Well, was, but
But at the time.
yeah,
And that
during
he
the
couldn't,
filming, she was married to him.
and the studio refused to insure him because of his illness, and that De Niro insured him, paid for it. The family aspect, I'm bringing that back in, that notion of they all thought, my understanding is that they thought that John Cazale, not only because of The Godfather, but Dog Day Afternoon, the handful of movies that he appeared in, they thought of him as one of the most extraordinary talents that we've lost.
He does a very good
prematurely.
job of being a creepy guy in this film.
Yeah. Yeah. He's kind of nerdy, isn't he?
I hate that we keep bringing up the wedding scene, but it takes up so much fucking time in this movie.
It does.
I was like,
it's lopsided. Is that a good word for my feeling about The Deer Hunter? It's a very lopsided movie as an experience.
So the character Stan, the front half of this movie is like, oh, we're supposed to get attached to these characters, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we see him domestic violence a chick at the fucking party, and I'm like, why should I give a shit about him?
I forget that. Yeah, I forgot that. Is that the bit where De Niro says... the bit I like is the reprise of that, though, which isn't that later in the film where he points over at a girl and says, what do you think of her? She's hot, isn't she? What do you think of her? And De Niro's looking at him like... And he basically says, no, she's not. She's an idiot.
Like, you think she's smart? And he's like,
she's an idiot.
No?
I'd love to see the screenplay for it. I'm sure a lot of it's improv because it's too good not to be, I think. I don't know. I guess my point is lopsided, but John, for me, when it's good, and we haven't even touched on the obvious stuff, the Russian roulette stuff.
Yes.
I think when it's good, when it's raw, I think it's really extraordinary, the movie. And I agree with you, though, that it's long and over bloated and yeah.
Well, seeing as you brought it up, why don't we go ahead and transition to talking about the Russian roulette scene?
Mao! Mao!
Why do they have Miller Lite?
Mao! My sister still shouts that at me sometimes because she is of the generation older than all of us here. She's 60, and so the Deer Hunter hit her much harder, I think, than it hit me and hit you guys. And she still shouts mouse occasionally when she wants me to do something.
I don't know if you saw or you noticed it, but you know how, like, in films there's some, like, not so discreet, like, product placement for companies that, like, help fund films and whatnot?
Uh-huh.
There is a
Is
moment.
it happening in that? Really?
Yes.
Are you serious? Have you looked that up? Do you know that?
I will. Like when we're done recording, I will go back. I will screen capture the moment and I will send it to you.
Okay. What? And
But
it's when?
so it's during the Russian roulette scene,
Which one? The
and
one in the jungle or the one in Saigon?
the jungle.
Okay.
So De Niro and Walken, they're in the cage, and they're planning their. Okay, we gotta put 3 bullets in this, and
Yeah.
like we're going to take advantage, and we're going to bust out of here. And like they look up because there's like cracks in the floorboards to see, just to check like what's going on. And as they're looking through the crack of the floorboard, you can see 2 things. You can see the Viet Cong who's running the Russian roulette game, and below him is a perfectly framed can of Miller beer.
Really? I didn't
Yes.
see it. I did not see that.
It was so fucking jarring to me. And I'm like, really? This is the moment you choose for that? Like,
Are you sure? I don't think
yes.
you know what? I need proof or it didn't happen.
I told you I will send it to you after we're done.
Yeah, but and you're sure that it was to do with product placement rather than just it looked good.
It was front center of the screen.
Okay, yeah, I did not see it. Jack, did you see this? Can you?
Rick, I would
did
like
not.
to bring this up. Our listeners at home didn't get to hear our last episode with Rick, but we had an argument before over an observation I made, and that was in
Oh,
Band of
yeah,
Brothers
you
of the
were
guy who
right,
got
man.
shot in the foot.
And you were right.
I was.
It was to do with the bloke in episode 2, wasn't it?
Yeah. He
Getting shot where he wasn't shot.
He got shot in the foot, but he keels over like he got shot in the chest.
And I've since seen it back because of this touring that we do via the World War II Museum, the National World War II Museum out of New Orleans. We watched the series, and so I can concur that I was wrong and that you were right, and that he does fall over and die from being shot in the foot, pretty much, doesn't he?
Yeah. So Rick, I would hope you would believe me if I'm choosing a hill to die on.
Yeah, I do believe you, but I still want the photo. I still want photo proof.
So what did you think of the first Russian roulette scene?
I think that it's extended, isn't it? It kind of takes 10, 15 minutes in a way because of the cage you're talking about. I think it's got some of the most raw and extraordinary acting, principally by De Niro, that we've ever really seen, if I'm completely honest with you. I think that the sotto voce whispering to John Savage down in the water, when he's kind of calming him, he's whispering in his ear, and he's trying to repeatedly say to him, "Don't." Can you remember what he's saying? It's like, "Don't think about it. Don't listen to it. Don't."
Right.
That's not scripted, man.
Shake it off.
Yeah, well, he's basically just saying. Is he saying don't listen to it?
He says a couple of different things,
but it's very quiet in the mix, isn't it? Very, very intense. That's before we even get to De Niro upstairs and the stuff he does when he's hit in the face by the Russian roulette maestro, and looks at him and sort of laughs his way through tears of anger at him. That's just a rare bit of acting. I mean, an extraordinary thing. You can't. I don't think you could. I don't know how the fuck De Niro does anything. If I'm honest, that's a different discussion. I'm sure you guys have got opinions on who, and it's always a crazy cul-de-sac to go down, isn't it? Who's the best and who's your favourite and who's this?
Personally, you're my favourite actor.
Well, we have mentioned. Well, that's very kind of you. But you've mentioned Meryl Streep. Who I think pound for pound, and certainly in nominations alone and in accolades, has an argument. There's an argument to be made for her being the greatest screen actor that there's ever been. But for me, De Niro, certainly when I was younger, he's just peerless, really. I don't know how the hell he does any of it. It's extraordinary. And I think that Russian roulette scene, it's funny you should ask me, because basically I end up talking about acting, don't I? because of what I do, and that's why I didn't see the Miller Lite beer thing. It's because I'm probably looking at the part of the frame that's got the actor in it more than the beer can.
Well, that's the point. We all have something to learn from each other, right?
Yeah, but I just. Yeah, De Niro once again. I mean, how many performances during the 70s and 80s, and on into the 90s was De Niro revelatory in? You should just stop counting after 20 of them, really.
Right.
And he just hit.
For me, I think it speaks volumes that, there are certain scenes and certain films that continuously show up in pop culture, whether it's cartoons and other media, that kind of stuff. And this roulette scene is one of those moments that it seems like it has popped up in some manner in
it's bigger than the film. It's bigger than the film, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's like, I hadn't seen this film, but I had seen that scene before.
Interesting.
Jack, what'd you think of the roulette scene?
Not many jokes.
It's so fucking iconic. And the one that sticks out in my head is the Always Sunny in Philadelphia, where they leave Frank in the basement for some reason. They just kind of lock him in there. And then they realize they forgot about him, so they go down to check on him. And he's fucking rolling. He's doing the thing where he's even dressed as the guy, and he's running the Russian roulette league. And him and his Vietnam buddies. And he even does like the Didi Mao, Junbi, Sichat.
Right. Mao. Which I take it means shoot, right? Or Mao, whatever that means.
I think Mao is ready or go.
Or go.
Diddy Mao is like get moving or keep walking or some shit. But
have you noticed, by the way, in terms of popular culture, have you been catching up with Squid Game and the second series?
Yep.
And I noticed that Russian roulette is front and center.
I was thinking about Deer Hunter, the end of the first episode.
Yeah, it's absolutely, Yeah, I just bring that up, John, because you were saying about how it keeps rebounding. That film is still alive in lots of ways.
I watched the first season of Squid Game and I enjoyed it. I don't know why. Well, I mean, I do, but I think I did enjoy Squid Game, and I think I would enjoy the second season. But part of me is I thought Squid Game was just perfectly fine as the one standalone season, and I'm I've heard nothing but good things, but also I'm do I really want to potentially endanger my opinion of this?
And I feel exactly the same way until I read that the writer-director, who amazingly wrote and directed all of them, as far as I understand, didn't make an awful lot out of that first series of Squid Game, given that it was the most popular series and still is, I think, on Netflix. And so went back to the drawing board, literally, to get his due, really. So that's why I've rewatched it. I've watched it with my older child. She's crazy about it. We watched it together. But anyway, I bring that up because the Russian roulette scene from Jack, as you were saying, right? The Russian roulette scene is front and center for the first, I think it's episode or 2 episodes of Squid Game 2. It's oh, it's time to have this again.
Yeah.
Now, I've read other people's reviews or their opinions of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the number one complaint that I've seen about the roulette is they're oh, this is a gross oversimplification of the basically they're this is a heavy-handed metaphor for the senselessness of war. Which, sure, but I feel like I'm just being a contrarian at some points now, because people love this film. I don't particularly care for it.
Mm-hmm.
People have bitched about this scene, but I actually enjoy it. From the aspect of, we came off a 40-minute wedding scene, and this is a 3-hour movie, and 30 minutes of it is spent in combat of Vietnam, or the POW experience. So it's a very small chunk of time to be devoted in this film to what is the root cause to the trauma. So I think, I personally, I have no problem, and I enjoy the fact that they're like, you know what? I think there's a bigger thing that I liked about it, which is if you think about a Vietnam veteran's experience. At the time in the military, let's say you got drafted and you got sent to Vietnam and then you got discharged. Your tour in Vietnam would be about a year, unless, you know, you got wounded or whatever. So if you think about like the average Vietnam vet who today is now in their 80s, which is, you know, we've had this discussion with other people, but, you know, it wasn't that long ago that like World War II vets were the guys who were in their 70s and 80s, and now they're in 90s and 100s, and now the Vietnam guys are, you know, they're the 80-year-olds. But think about living an 80 or 90-year long life, and Vietnam takes up one of your 80 years. I appreciate the fact, even though I think the wedding scene is entirely too long, I appreciate the fact that, okay, this is a 3-hour movie, but the smallest section of the movie is devoted to Vietnam, and I think it is commiserate with the amount of time that would actually be spent in your life. And yet, a small amount of time in Vietnam has the largest impact on you, as it does in this film. So I think it's a very good parallel that they do.
Jack, does he always say smart stuff?
Yeah.
Does he? Has he since
Him
you've
brain
known
make
him?
big word.
Yeah, since you've known him, does he always say like smart shit?
Him brain make big word, make my small brain hurt.
No, I agree. I'm being childish. I agree. I think what you're saying is, yeah, the impact of that short scene is emblematic of the impact of a year's trauma in flipping combat in Vietnam over a lifetime. I think that's true.
Like, if you're only going to spend 30 minutes in Vietnam, you go balls to the wall to get your point across.
What about when you pick up? I find it interesting when you arrive in Vietnam, because that's De Niro when he picks up sort of, what is it, a fire,
A flame.
I love that.
I was like, kick ass.
Yeah. It's extraordinary, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah.
The flamethrower was honestly kind of jarring with how kind of like artistic the rest of this film is.
Yeah, like something. Suddenly you think you're in Predator or something like that. Yeah. Well, you know, it's quite a surprise when the way he lands in Vietnam as a filmmaker, isn't it? Well, given where you've been for, as you say, 40 minutes for the wedding, an hour all told, and the prologue is an hour long. Suddenly you've got De Niro not really recognizing that amazing bit where they come up and try and get hold of him, and it's as if he sort of has never seen. He sort of might know them, but he doesn't really know them, even though they're his best mates. Do you know what I mean?
He's in Arnold Schwarzenegger commando mode.
He's in full Rambo mode by then. Yeah. What do you think, Jack? Are you more into it than John? I'm actually interested that we've had a chat where you know we're not all one-sided about it. What do you think, Jack?
You know, pacing issues aside, I do enjoy this movie for what it represents and the story it tells. Yeah, it's weird that the wedding and prologue-ish scene takes up like just under half the movie. We're in Vietnam. Shit transpires. They're captives. They get rescued. One of them leaves behind. Comes back, rescues the guy who's now a Russian roulette world champion and heroin addict.
Which I gotta say, if I'm in the hospital with no legs and I'm just getting packets of money in the mail, I'm not questioning it, okay?
Yeah, he just fucking ruined that guy's financial security. Shame on him.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that, yeah.
But
I don't know. I think that I'm still left with not just that haunting piece of music, but the handful of bits of delicate acting within, I think, The Deer Hunter, which I just don't see very much these days, guys, if I'm honest. I can't think of a movie where there's a bit where the music swells up and De Niro has returned, but he's hidden from his friends. He's hidden intentionally because he can see they're all in the place, you know, that they're waiting to welcome Michael home, and he can't face that. So he just stands across the road in his gear, and he's not shot from the front where you can see all of his medals, etc. He's just shot from behind, watching the space before he crosses the road, and the music swells up. There's just Walken when he can't speak at the mental hospital, at the hospital place, when they try and ask him his name, and he can't really muster it. I'm just struck with a handful of, even them tripping over at the wedding in that long lineup where they're all sort of goofing around right at the end of it, and they're drunk, and so they're all sort of falling on their floor, falling all over the place. De Niro running butt naked up the street. You know, there's just so many, I think, extraordinary acting moments in the movie that's why it carries it for me. That's why I wanted you to watch it, I think.
I gotta say, the wedding scene does have one, like, maybe it isn't subtle and I'm just an idiot, but for me, it was like one of the most subtle, what's the fucking word I'm trying to think of?
Empathy. Oh no, that was the one earlier.
No, when the movie's trying to give you a hint of something that's about to come.
Foreshadowing.
There we go.
I like that. Foreshadowing.
So when they're all
foreboding.
drunk and then random ass army guy, you know, he comes home. He has nothing to do with the wedding. He's just like, this is the town bar. I'm going to the bar to get a drink. And they're all trying to talk to him because they're like, hey, we're going over there next. And he's like,
they're drunk and they're being pricks, really, aren't they?
Yeah, and he's just like, fuck off.
And De Niro almost gets aggressive with him, doesn't he? He sort of has to get pulled away from him. Yeah.
But in that moment, you're just like, oh, it's just a dude who's being annoyed. And like, also, I'm annoyed by these characters too. So I don't really think anything of it. But then you, like, when you're talking about when he returns and is standing across, that was the moment where I was like, oh, this movie gave me a hint about what was about to come.
Did the movie make you guys feel patriotic at all? I'm mainly asking about the last scene, about the singing.
Didn't feel particularly patriotic, no.
I've heard him talking about that also in interview, Michael Cimino, just saying about they need to make a sound, this family of people, and they've all learnt that song from when they were kids. Everyone knows that song in the States, and I'm sure, is that still the case? I'm sure it is still the case, right?
Oh yeah.
So he said it was less about patriotism; it was more about a shared song that they all knew, really.
I think it's about time we put a rating on this film.
Ooh. Can we do a cheeky? Are we allowed to do a cheeky Apocalypse Now rating as well, even though we haven't even talked about it?
You know what? You can do whatever rating you want.
Okay,
I mean,
Our guest.
I'm tempted to just say we bring back the poop bag rating from the episode that did get released, but
what's the rate? How's the rating system work again?
We do 1 to 5 things that represent the film. I personally, so the first thing I texted Jack while watching this film. So our characters are in an Eastern Orthodox community, which I thought was an interesting choice to narrow in on. But because of that, you know, there's a lot of traditional Polish and Russian, you know, dress that occurs. And before the wedding occurs, we see like 4 or 5 like almost stereotypical like Russian babushka grandmothers carrying this cake. And that was what I texted Jack. I was like, it was almost like a bad like, how many whatever does it take to screw in a light bulb? But instead it was like, how many babushkas does it take to carry a cake?
Yeah. Plenty.
So for me, I would like to go by 1 to 5 babushkas, but
okay, beautiful. Okay, 1 being not very impressive on the babushka front. 5 being that's a hell of a lot of babushkas there.
Yes.
Okay, okay, and it's just a straight on how good we think it is.
Yep. I was tempted to be like 1 to 5 wedding crowns because I also texted. I'm like, this is horseshit. I didn't have a crown at my wedding.
Crown, yeah. I'm
Like
trying to
when they
think
do the
what else.
wedding ceremony, they like hover crowns over the bride and groom.
Yeah, I saw that. When they're parading them around on their shoulders.
Yeah.
Yeah. All
But
right, who goes first then?
Jack, you give me 1 to 5 babushkas.
4 out of 5, or 4.5 babushkas. Like almost 5 babushkas, but one of them's all tattered and ratty and shitty.
4 regular babushkas and like 1 poor one.
Yeah, like one very poorly kempt one. Like, why are you even still wearing that? Get a new babushka, you poor ass.
Great empathy, Jack.
Yeah, maybe if you carried enough cakes, you'd have enough money to get a new one, huh? How
Okay,
dare you?
I'm feeling. Yeah. How many babushkas are you talking about, John?
The guy who just likes movies does not want to score it very highly. The guy who reviews movies and has a podcast about movies wants to give it a high score.
Are those two at odds a lot when we record? Just curious.
Yes, they are.
I thought so.
Especially like when we did 300, because the guy who just watches movies during 300 was like, "Fuck yeah!"
Right.
That's why I'm almost glad when we review bad adjacent movies, because you can just turn off your mind and enjoy them.
I like this division. Am I allowed to divide myself like this too?
Yes. In fact, you're almost encouraged.
You can divide yourself into as many personalities as you want.
Right. Okay. Well, then, I as a regular movie watcher in 2025, we're in now. I too wouldn't necessarily score it very highly, but as somebody in certainly the TV making world, it gets 6 babushkas for me. It just the ambition of it is just absolutely mind blowing to me. How they've got it made, I don't even. I mean, just stuff. There's that shot of the truck, and I could see that it's a truck coming under a bridge in the grey early morning light in Pennsylvania, in either torrential rain or it's pre-dawn. And I was thinking, this isn't like Magic Hour. They haven't shot this at 7 o'clock at night. They've shot this at flipping, I don't know, 5:30, 5:45 in the morning. Probably probably quite a small, even for Michael Cimino, skeleton crew. But it's a fantastic shot. For me, yeah, I'm giving it 6 babushkas for that. But as a movie experience, I recognise that it's lopsided, so I might have to go even as low as 3 babushkas.
I feel very similarly. As just as I'm a person who is just to randomly watch this movie in 2025. I think this is a 3 babushka film. But a while ago, we did a film from the 1940s. It's called The Fighting Sullivans. And it was a wartime film, and it was about 5 brothers who all served on the same ship in World War II. Ship sank, they all died. And that film, very much like this film, has a disproportion issue when it comes to scenes and content. And with that film, the approach I took when rating it was I didn't rate it against what it is today. I rated it against what it was. What was it trying to accomplish when it came out, and essentially what was the film when it. I try to think of the film as it was supposed to be the day it was released, because I don't think there's any film that truly ages 100% perfectly. And for that reason, I would give Deer Hunter a 5 babushka rating based on what it was supposed to be.
Or the You mean you mean he's saying smart stuff again, Jack? Is that a problem?
Yeah, what a nerd.
Because what you're basically saying, what you're arguing for, is context.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
So if we were to cut the cheese on that, that's a 4 babushka film between the two versions of John.
Okay. And out of curiosity, I mean, we might have to do Apocalypse Now another time, man. Now that have you done Apocalypse Now? Yeah.
No, if you wanna reserve that one, it's all yours.
I mean, and we haven't even mentioned the words "band of" and "brothers," except in the context that you spoke to Matt. I wonder what Leachy makes of the Deer Hunter. I should ask him. What did you talk to him about? The whole series, by the way. You talked to him about all of that.
One episode.
No, we didn't even talk to him about Band of Brothers.
Oh, right. Okay.
Shockingly, you guys who have been in Band of Brothers are a little sick of talking about Band of Brothers.
For 20 years.
Yeah, I well, we can go into that another time. I'm actually not. I'm coming back. I'm coming back on that. I don't mind talking about it.
So Matt chose. It was a German. We did it as one episode, but it was a 3-part miniseries from Germany called Generation War.
Wow, I don't. Oh, hold on. No, I don't think I do know that.
Yeah, it was in the German title was like Our Fathers, Our Mothers or something. It's German Band of Brothers.
Yeah,
right.
It's a good way of describing it as German Band of Brothers.
And it's been made in the last how long? When was it made?
This century.
Yeah, it was made in early 2010s, I believe.
And it's something Matt knew and he had enjoyed, was it? So he threw it your way.
Yeah, I highly recommend it.
Yeah, but Christ, it was depressing.
Yeah, not many
as
jokes.
You expect.
More jokes than the Deer Hunter, or less? Actually, I can't say less jokes. I would be told off for that. Fewer jokes is better English. I'm told. So fewer jokes than the Deer Hunter. You saying?
Yeah. I mean, neither one of these were exactly gut-busting comedies.
Yeah, but I reckon you could make a case. There are bits in Apocalypse Now that I think are hilarious. Maybe that's why we need to do that.
Charlie, don't surf!
Yeah, I just...
I love the smell of napalm in the morning. Smells like
zap him with your sirens, man. Zap him with the sirens.
Play Ride of the Valkyries. Scares the shit out of them.
Yeah.
So, Jack, what does Rotten Tomatoes give this?
So,
cool. Rotten Tomatoes.
We like to test our prowess against them.
Yeah.
What does Rotten Tomatoes say?
We're only 6 months away from being eligible to be Rotten Tomato reviewers ourselves.
Wow. Cool.
So, the tomometer for this movie is 86%. That's the critic rating. And the audience rating is 91%. Okay. I think I'm going to go with the audience on this one. I think their review is more apt.
It's pretty high marks. I mean,
yeah.
I've given it a 6 babushkas. You gave it a 5, Jack, didn't you? And you gave it a
4.5.
Yeah, 4.5, and you gave it a 4. So we're talking, heavy babushka content.
Yeah. A whole lot of babushka right there.
Weirdly enough, they base their reviews on like tomato freshness. We base ours on babushkas, so worlds apart.
Jack, I'm going to have to send you a picture. I just remember this. It's fucking hilarious. So my dad, he turned 60 this year, but he was active duty Air Force. So as a kid, I grew up on military bases, and he spent 25 years in the military. And when he retired, we moved to a small town in Iowa, which is why I know about which parts of the state to drive in that aren't boring for your future reference.
Right.
And so the town we moved to was like 1,000 people. And so I very much connected with this is the town bar, reception hall, VFW meeting, like the 7-in-1 event center. But like a year or two ago, here in the States, there's kind of been this like new kind of fad that's come up, which is like quilting groups, like quilt blankets.
Are you getting back to my knitting hat again?
I am. I'm very good at bringing stuff full circle.
Did the audience hear about my knitting? No, probably not. We might have to.
They probably caught a little bit of it.
Well, maybe. Anyway, carry on. Quilting, blankets. Yeah.
So what they've been doing are these things called like freedom blankets or hero blankets, where they choose at a Veterans Day program. Because we do Veterans Day on. Why am I having such a hard time today?
It's Jack's fault, I think.
Yep.
Yeah.
Everyone always blames me.
Armistice Day for you.
All right.
So, Armistice Day for you, Veterans Day for us.
The 11th, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So what they do is like we'll have a Veterans Day program, do all these things, but something that's kind of come up recently and is very popular, especially like in smaller communities, is they'll pick a person and present them with this quilt as like a thank you for your service type thing. And like a year or two ago, my dad was selected, and my mom sent me a picture from this service where he's wrapped up in this quilt. Like he has a quilt like draped over him, and he has like a little microphone in his hand. And I shit you not, he looks like it. That picture made him look 30 years older than he actually is. And the first thing I texted him was a picture of a Russian babushka. I was like, glad to see you had a great time at the Veterans Day event today. And in this picture, this like Russian babushka is holding two canes, and he's like, I only need one to beat you. Like, sorry, Dad.
I wonder what he makes of the Deer Hunter movie like that.
I should ask him.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I'm always interested in what military people make of military movies or military work.
You know what? Just for the kicks and giggles of it, I know you've never met my dad, but I'm going to send you that picture. You'll get a kick out of it. You'll see why I thought it was so fucking funny.
of this poor man wrapped up looking 30 years older than he actually is.
Yes. He looks like a frail little babushka. But Rick,
No.
It has been fantastic having you on. I am very much looking forward to having you again to do Apocalypse Now.
Yeah, I'd like that.
I'd like to hand the floor over to you. If you have any social media accounts or any projects that you'd like the people to know about, have at it.
As usual, in my capacity as, small supporting actor to the right, which I've tried to make my own for the best part of 30 years, I've got various little bits and bobs coming on. But I quite like to surprise people with them. I quite like people to be watching. It's a bit like a game of Where's Wally? Do you have those books in the States?
We do.
Right. Okay. Well, that's a bit like my acting career, where you're looking at a very populated page, and then you'll go, I think this guy in the stripy jumper's Rick, isn't it? In this thing. So I've got some TV series that are coming out here. But in terms of social media, I kind of feel in the last few days, what with all these social media, without getting too heavy with you, with all these social media companies coming out and clamping down on weird things like truth fact checking, that I kind of feel like disbanding all my social media stuff, which is a bit of a bold statement, isn't it? But this is about as close to a bold statement as I can make. I've tried and failed to leave Twitter before, and I failed and ended back on it.
I personally have great respect for anybody who can be completely devoid of social media, but well, unfortunately, that doesn't do very well for our listening.
No, I understand
numbers.
that. I understand that, and I have that tension too, because every time I try and pull away from it, because we both know you can spend hours of your life in there, can't you? That you get back. But every time I try and pull away from it, and something comes out, like I've done this series that's coming out soon called Malpractice, the second series of that, and I've got quite a big part in it. And when that starts to emerge, I know my wife will tap me on the shoulder and say, right, time you started tweeting about it, time you started putting stuff on Instagram about it, time you started putting stuff on Facebook about it. So,
and you have a YouTube channel. Don't forget to tell people about your YouTube channel.
I don't really. I haven't really added to it much since my Band of Brothers, my lunch at Longmore little film, have I? I should probably try and do that more. Although I think if I went on YouTube and did another little film, it would just be me rambling on about watches and my obsession, my midlife crisis, and the fact that
You'd be surprised the people that'd be into that. People listen to us, so why not you?
quarter life crisis havers.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have anything obvious to tell your wonderful viewers about in terms of work-wise, but I will be cropping up in something childish at some stage during the year, no doubt. And listen, in the future, apart from Apocalypse Now, I'm happy to come on and talk to you another time about Band, because all I will say about Band of Brothers is that I'm waiting for it to age, guys, and it doesn't appear to be happening. And I think it's something really unusual about that bit of work. I've been in quite a lot of work over 30 years. Good stuff, middling, and bad stuff. It's all aged. Band of Brothers doesn't appear to be, as far as I can see. It's a heck of
an interesting perspective, and I feel like I've noticed that too. And we've talked more specifically about it because we started earlier last year because we wanted to do episode by episode to kind of line up a little bit with 80th anniversary events. And when we were talking about episode 2, especially like the jump scene, a lot of that, like that jump scene is heavily CGI'd, and for CGI from 2000, it still holds up remarkably well.
Okay, so that will be our opening question to ourselves. Why? Is that, why is it that the CG, when the planes come overhead halfway through Ep 6, I think it is, the Spitfire, either a Spitfire, something comes across the forests outside. Yeah. Why
like when they drop supplies?
Yeah, or like when we're on the train in episode 1, which is all blue screen. Why is it that the CG looks as good as it does? And I can watch stuff. I can watch the Star Wars prequels and say, man, this CG sucks, man. But Band, it just shows no sign of aging.
Well, that's the secret. I said earlier, nothing ages 100%, but that show does.
Yeah. It's a rare beast, isn't it? I think we're all very lucky to have been involved in it. It's extraordinary.
Jack, do you have anything else before we head out?
Yeah. I don't know if I've mentioned... I'm almost certain I've mentioned this to you before, John, but I had an uncle in Vietnam.
Oh.
Uncle Jim. He's older Native American guy. I'm pretty sure he's even described his service as fighting the white man's war. And... Fun fact about my Uncle Jim, that picture of that scared little Vietnamese girl running down the road naked because napalm burned off her clothes? He was there. He says that little girl ran right by him.
Jeepers.
Yeah, he doesn't... I don't recall him talking about his service a whole lot, but back in 2018, my grandpa died, and he was at the funeral. And he gave his little speech, and he talked about how he would watch American planes drop Agent Orange on the jungle, and then the jungle turn fetid and rotten and die, and how it left his soul feeling empty. And I kind of wanted to pull that scene from The Big Lebowski where he says, Walter, what the fuck was that? You turned a eulogy into a rant about Vietnam.
Yeah.
As one does. Jack, if I die before you, which I will because I'm so much older than you,
I don't know, I live a bit more recklessly than you.
You have full permission to do a diatribe about Vietnam at my funeral.
God, I don't know why you saw fit to take 20 of my boys on Hamburger Hill. Oh my God.
Jack, you were born in 95.
The wounds are still fresh. But
I'm putting my beanie hat on in honour for when we say our farewells. Jack, you can see it, can't you?
I can.
I want the listeners to know that this knitted hat that I've done here has got 4 different stitches in that I've learnt, and that I didn't go from a pattern. I basically made this horror show up.
You know what? Does it function the way you want it to?
Yeah, like a tea like a tea cozy fitting on my head. It keeps me warm, but I don't think I'd ever wear it out. I've only worn it for your amusement more than anything else. Yeah, it's horrendous. But I think my wife's verdict of 1 babushka is harsh. I mean, I don't even think she would have given it 1 babushka. I don't think she would have rated it.
It's 0 babushka hat.
It's a 0 babushka hat. Look at that ribbing. Look at that.
It looks nice to me.
Yeah, I can see you checking it out.
You know what? You said you were going to remember my birthday. I expect a knitted hat for my birthday next year.
Okay, 6th of Jan, man. Never forget that.
And also, before we sign off, I feel the need to give a shout out to John Cazale, who was in this movie, but he died of cancer before it was released.
Yeah.
And he pushed himself on through filming. And the thing about him is he was not in a whole lot of movies. He was in The Godfather as well. Don't remember what other ones, but if I'm not mistaken, he won an award for every single part that he played.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, but I think that's a power move. Like starring in several big movies, winning an award for each and every one of them, dying before your arguably best work was even released. And then
I think it's something like 5 movies. We talked about him earlier, John, didn't we? About his marriage with Meryl Streep, and
oh yeah, that's right.
But I think you're quite right. I think it's worth putting a shout out to him. He seems to be, as far as I can work out by looking at interviews with both De Niro and Pacino, like the quintessential movie star's favorite actor is John Cazale, as far as I can work out.
And he's a good actor too, and was a good actor, but goddamn, yeah.
Yeah, amazing. And I think it's weird because we see the tip of the iceberg a little bit. What I mean is we see the movie work, but we don't see the work they did on stage together, these guys. They're all New Yorkers, right? As is Michael Cimino, as I understand it, also in New York. I'm sure all of these people, it's quite I'd imagine it's quite a small scene in New York. I get where they all knew each other, these guys. And I'll send Matt your best. I'm talking to him tomorrow, I think.
Can do. We would love to have him back. I sent him a message, but everybody has busy schedules, so.
Yeah, it's about getting it sorted. I see you spoke to Chris Langlois as well, right?
Yeah, he was our last Band of Brothers episode.
Nice guy. Yeah.
So, if you've enjoyed this episode, and if you've enjoyed our guest, go follow him on his different social medias. Please leave a review.
At Dick Warden, by the way.
At Dick Warden.
Yeah.
If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review. The stars do matter. If you want additional content from us, you can find us on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok for as long as that still exists. Rick, thank you again so much for joining us.
Thanks, guys. It's a pleasure.
And until next time, I've been John.
And I'm Jack.
And we will see you all later.
Bye.